York Times is just getting purged right now.
Do you think that race...
It is an honor.
Okay, we are opening up the mic now. It's 5 minutes after 5. I'd hope to get on a little sooner than this, but
okay, we are opening up the mic now.
It's
5 minutes after 5. I'd hope to get on a little sooner than this, but
also on YouTube.
We are opening up
appreciate
the
you
mic
guys
now.
stopping by.
5 minutes after 5.
During this
I hope to get
update,
on a little sooner
number
than
of
this,
things to
but
get. Also on YouTube,
we are opening up the
appreciate
mic
you guys
now.
stopping by. A lot of things to talk about. During this update, warnings and number of issues.
Also on YouTube, we are opening up the mic now.
During this update, new warnings have just been issued for much of New York State. We'll be discussing the latest on what to expect, not just for New York, but most of you guys know my home is back in Kentuckiana, so a lot of focus on this storm for parts of the Ohio River Valley. And this will be the biggest snowfall. And this will be the biggest winter storm in at least 5, if not 10 years. This could be a decade in the making here. So I want to make sure that I'm focusing attention on both New York, the Ohio River Valley, and so many other places that just never see this type of weather. I mean, I say they never see it. We've got winter storm warnings that have been posted all the way down to the Mexican border of Texas. All right, this is some pretty bizarre stuff. So let me get the word out that we're on here on Twitter, and then we can formally get started. But again, I have never, and I mentioned this earlier, I have never in my life seen a winter storm warning this large. It's incredible what they've done. And I say they, it's the Weather Service that's responsible for issuing the watches, the warnings, the advisories. And I've never seen one this big. This is incredible. It's huge. From the Texas Gulf Coast and also the Mexican border, parts of New Mexico, clear through the Gulf Coast of Louisiana. Not New Orleans. They're under an advisory, I believe. But Louisiana goes all the way north into almost the Central Plains, all of the lower and into the middle Mississippi River Valley. Just about all of I think it is, the entirety of the Ohio River Valley. And then now new warnings have been issued up into New York. So jumping on this, want to quickly just see who we have on here, and then we'll move forward. And if you don't mind, a quick like and share of this feed is always appreciated. We've got about 400 people live on our Facebook page, so thank you. And as always, we encourage you guys to continue to like and share the program. So what I'm going to do, since this is now out, start to look at the new data coming in. And not only is this a very large system, we've got severe cold that's in place right now. Brutally cold air mass that's in place across the plains. And that's the reason that this setup is the way it is, because you could not have anything nearly as widespread as what we're looking at without that. So with that being said, going to take a couple of comments before we get started here, and we'll jump on over to live radar in a moment as well. There's a closer up look at, again, the area of warnings, which does include all the way down here in South Texas. It just doesn't snow south of San Antonio. San Antonio rarely sees snow. They're going to see snow. They're going to see ice in Houston. They could have a half foot or more snow in Memphis, Tennessee, plus ice. It's going to be a pretty nasty mixture of ice, snow, freezing rain, the whole gamut for parts of Tennessee River Valley. And then that's an ice storm warning in effect for far eastern Kentucky, parts of West Virginia, including Charleston, where you could have damaging amounts of ice. And now the new warnings issued up here, western New York, much of upstate New York, officially placed under those winter storm warnings. So discussing what everybody can expect coming up here in a couple of moments. Let's see who we have on the program, and I'm trying to dedicate some of my resources over to our other computers so I don't put too much of a burden on this, but I aim to keep this at about 15 minutes or so. Looks like we've got about 500 live. Thank you. Keep those likes and shares coming on Facebook. And also, if you're following me from Twitter right now, I appreciate you guys. And, yeah, absolutely. If you guys want to help us get the word out that we're on here. Okay, so this is kind of a broad overview. This is the 18Z NAM. I'm going to let that run through a couple of times. The snow begins for the Ohio River Valley after midnight tonight. Could have a few inches, in fact, by morning tomorrow, depending on your location. And we're going to dial in. We're going to jump into some of these locations, including Kentuckiana, where both myself and Lisa are from, and then into western New York, where we'll take a close-up look at how much snow. So you get two waves. First wave reaching Kentuckiana late tonight, and then this is the thumping. It's tomorrow evening, tomorrow night. So starting by mid-afternoon on your Monday, it's going to be a mess across the Ohio River Valley, and you see all of that making its way up into western New York, where it's not going to be pretty there either. A lot of snow. I think there's a lot of people that are going to wake up and this is going to be by Wednesday, because this is going to be a 2-day storm for parts of the region. New York, you're going to get most of yours as we head on into the day on Tuesday. Okay, so watches and warnings everywhere. Epic number. We've got record cold out west. There's a close-up look at the future radar for tonight, tomorrow night. This is Kentuckiana. And while I'm talking to you guys, let's see who we have. We've got Kim Carr, I've got Janice, I've got Connie, I've got Stacy on here. Thank you for stopping by. We've got Leslie as well, about 500 people live. If Lisa was with me, she'd be ringing the cowbell right now. She'll be back. We'll have a later show tonight as well. Rich Lupia says, name keeps trending further north. Yes, and I agree that area of mixed precipitation is going to be key to how much snow and how much ice you actually end up with. And I think we're going to be seeing a combination of both for many. For Indiana, I would say, I'm going to pull up the map so I can talk to you to tell you what I'm looking at right now live. And Rich Lupia, for those that don't know, he is a meteorologist. Spent a few years doing live TV broadcasts, and now he's more of a weather enthusiast, but he does keep up a great Facebook page and a website called Upstate Snow. If you are a snow enthusiast, look up Rich and check out his Facebook page. All right, so let's see. It is about 5:12. As mentioned, we've got a ton to get to, but I want to keep this as concise as I can. And we're going to focus on the areas, again, of the Midwest, the Ohio River Valley for the most part. We'll touch on the rest of these places as they just don't normally see weather like this. It's very, very rare that you see this type of a storm. Now, there's actually multiple low pressures. There's one on the East Coast providing mainly rain. Eventually will provide some freezing rain out towards Philadelphia. That one's not the problem. The actual storm of interest is just now beginning to generate snow across much of the southern plains right now into the heart of Texas. It's the big country. I used to forecast out of Abilene and San Angelo. Right now they're seeing moderate to heavy snow in Abilene. So this is all the evolution. So the storm gets started here, and then everything begins to shift to the east, and that storm's really going to pick up some steam as it does so too, especially later on during the day tomorrow for the Ohio River Valley. Here's a look at the enhanced infrared satellite imagery, taking a look into what's occurring up above us right now. A lot of jet stream wind energy diving into the southern Rockies. And you can see, so this is where that area of low pressure is. Let's see if I can get my whiteboard to work. So you've got multiple areas of low pressure, but this is diving deep south, and the reason it's doing so is because there's a mass of very cold air just to the leeward side of the Rockies. And you're talking about where air temperatures are below zero in many cases, and we can take a look at some of those temperatures coming up in a few moments. But this is the origin of the storm. Low pressure is going to eject out of the Rockies tonight, tomorrow, and then it's going to speed right on up through the Ohio River Valley, where we've got a frontal boundary that's going to set up across the southeastern United States. That's going to bring warm air aloft for some people, plenty of cold air near the surface, and of course when you have that combination and lift, you have everything you need for a mixed bag. Unfortunately, I think the freezing rain is going to be the real deal in some cases, and it could be very damaging. Here's a quick look at the jet stream winds. You got that strong low pressure. You've got a united westerly flow. There's no split jet here. There's just one. As again, that Arctic air mass is spilled all the way down into the central portions of the United States, which is going to allow this entire setup to unfold. Without it, we don't see that. This is the 18Z NAM. We'll start here in the Midwest. So the new run of the NAM is consistently, the last couple of runs have been further north. And that is going to bring an absolute thumping of snow to parts of Indiana, I think parts of far western and far northern Kentucky. We'll see the heart of this snowfall, maybe right along the Ohio River, along or perhaps either side of the Ohio. And the heaviest of this will begin to fall. It'll really pick up in intensity tomorrow afternoon. It's coming in a little quicker, but really anytime after 1, 2 o'clock, it's going to begin to come down. And then by late afternoon, I think we're seeing some very heavy snowfall. So that's for the Ohio River Valley. Let's jump on into the Northeast, and then we'll go over totals together. And with that, let's want to see, we've got about 450 people live. Thank you for being here. Again, we appreciate if you keep the likes and shares going. Got a little crowd building over on our YouTube channel as well. Thank you for being here. Melanie, Mark, Joanne on here with a share. Thank you, Joanne. Mike on here. I've got Ivan. Are you thinking it'll be 1 to 2 punch combo for Rock this week? Jeremy. I'm just going to maybe mention the second storm at the end of this segment. But Ivan, yes, for some people this is going to be a 1-2 punch. There's a lot of questions with that second one. We're going to focus on the first storm. That'll get us through the next 48 hours. And then again, we'll look ahead. We'll talk a little bit more about that next storm coming down the pipe. So we'll get to that coming up here in a few minutes. Here you go. New run of the NAM. We're going to focus quickly on the eastern Great Lakes, New England, and the Northeast. You're going to have a mixed bag downstate. It'll be sleet primarily, and then some freezing rain mixed in for New York City. You can see the snow as it gets going. You've got some ongoing lake effect snow tonight, downwind of Lake Ontario. Favored lake belts like Oswego, northern Cayuga, maybe parts of Wayne County. So that's ongoing. And then here comes the first wave of snow. This will begin during the day on Monday in the morning. And it'll increase from west to east. This is the first wave. Keep in mind, you're going to have multiple waves with the first storm. So it snows pretty good for a while. And then you might get a break late afternoon and evening for western New York and Rochester. It's not going to be a long one. And then here comes the main thrust. Heavy, heavy duty snowfall. And this is all of western New York, central and upstate. And then look at that. Look at the area of orange. That's where it's going to mix in with sleet. And that's going to affect your totals down in the southern tier. Right now, we're keeping it almost all snow for Rochester, for Buffalo. It's questionable for Syracuse. It looks like you're more likely to mix over for a period. And that will affect totals as well. And then the storm begins to shift to the east. I do like the NAM, by the way, at this range. I know the NAM's not got the greatest reputation of a longer range, but when it's within a day, say 1 to maybe 2 days in advance, it does a pretty good job. So I am going to reference the NAM quite a bit during this. Again, here's another look at the watches, the warnings that are in effect. And while I pull up new data for you, I'll let you watch. This is the run of the NAM for the Ohio River Valley. And then we're going to jump right on into potential totals. So I'm pulling that up now. Doing a little bit of multitasking here on WxLIVE. As always, we appreciate you guys being on here. Let's talk precipitation amounts with this. And we're going to take a look at the entirety of the eastern United States. And then we'll focus in on our regions. And again, I acknowledge our friends down there in Texas. You don't have weather like this, but it's coming. Parts of Louisiana, you don't normally see this stuff. Memphis, Tennessee. It's been a long time, but it's coming. So be ready for it. This is kind of the broad view, the new run of the NAM, and I want to jump on in. You see many areas expecting quite a bit of precipitation here. Where you have the yellow, and we're going to focus on Kentucky and Indiana next. So let's jump on into our Kentuckiana view, where you're looking at locally an inch of precipitation or more, which again, this is liquid precipitation. So if it's all melted down, that's what your liquid equivalent would be around an inch to maybe even an inch and a quarter for southeastern parts of Kentucky. That's where the worst of the ice is going to occur. So what about, say, for Louisville, Kentucky? Well, I'm glad you asked. So we've been consistently looking at somewhere about 7 to 8/10 of an inch of liquid precipitation. It doesn't make a difference what model at this point that you're looking at. So this is the NAM. I'm going to jump on over to the European model, and it's showing you something very similar. It's not quite as high a resolution. So, okay, cut to the chase. What does this mean for snowfall? Well, we can't give you the snowfall quite yet until we know what the temperature profile is going to do. What we know is the surface is going to be good and cold the entirety of the time. This is the European model here showing temperatures don't escape maybe the mid-20s on Monday. But what about upstairs? So that means that the bottom part of the atmosphere is very cold. What about upstairs? So let's go to 925. The zero line is over southeast Kentucky. So that means you're going to have air temperatures reaching above freezing down here in southeast Kentucky for a period of time on Monday. That's why they're expecting the ice. It doesn't get to Louisville. What about 850? Let's go up a little bit further. This is where the real problem is for southeast Kentucky, is because, again, that area of above freezing temperatures not too far away from the surface. It'll be up above us. And what that means is that you're going to have sleet and you're going to have freezing rain, and it's going to come down hard for southeastern Kentucky. But look at Louisville. Look at for the areas further north where the temperature just does not get there. It's going to remain well below freezing up and down the column. I do know that the NAM is further north, so let me go back to that. I'll go back to the NAM here real quick. And for those that are interested in the software that we're using, this is WeatherBell, which is a really great resource. It is a premium, so you'll pay for it, but if you really love weather, I think it's worth it. It does a good job. So looking at temperatures via the NAM, we're looking at 850. We go to snow totals next. We've got about 380 people live, so if you've been waiting for the snow totals, it's coming next. Keep the shares coming. But it's critical as a meteorologist that we have to know what's happening up above us. And again, looking at that zero line on the NAM, significantly further north than the Euro. That means much of eastern Kentucky and southeastern Kentucky could see significant ice. And I'm talking about even Lexington could see significant ice, mainly sleet, but it could occur there. And this is going to make the totals very tricky. But I still think for Louisville, for the Ohio River in north, this is all snow. By the way, we're going to New York State next. So 380 live now. Let's talk about those snowfall totals. We talked about precipitation near 1 inch for much of eastern, southeastern Kentucky. That's going to convert at the bare minimum. That's going to convert to a 10-to-1 ratio. I think it's going to be higher than that. So on the very lowest I can foresee us as far as snowfall, I can't see anything less than about 8 inches for Louisville, Kentucky. So I think this is kind of the bare minimum. And you can see where those areas are going to get robbed of good snow totals. That's where you're going to have the warm air aloft. And that does include, again, Lexington to Bowling Green. You make your way east to Jackson, Kentucky. Man, this is going to be a sleet and freezing rain fest. Mainly sleet. Okay, so one thing I want you guys to keep in mind, that this is not going to be a 10-to-1 snowfall. This is not. Here's the European, by the way. Looking at the same numbers, it's got that heavier band just a little further south and east. But this is not going to be a 10-to-1 for places like Louisville, for places like Indiana. I think it's going to be higher. Now, do I think that this is probably a little overdone? Maybe a little bit, especially on the north end. It's going to be, this is the European model showing central and southern Indiana 12 to 16 inches of snow. Did you hear me? That's the Euro. That's using the Kuchera method, which is notorious for kind of overestimating. Here's the thing, and while I agree, it's definitely probably overestimating this stuff further south. Maybe not in Louisville. I'm not so sure about Louisville at all. Probably that's overestimated some. But I would say this from Louisville into Indiana, this area here, southern Indiana, along the Ohio River, I think 12 inches is very achievable. Very achievable. So my forecast for Louisville, Kentucky, if you're along the Ohio River by a county on either side, 8 to 12 inches. Easy. That's an easy 8 to 12. Could we end up with a surprise with some of these higher numbers that the Euro is showing here? 13, 14, 15 inches? It's possible, and here's why. Because the air is going to be that cold. This isn't a situation where you're dealing with a sticky and a compacted type of a snow. You're not going to be mixing in sleet along the Ohio River. Okay? So that means it's all snow. It's very cold. So these are going to be good ratios, high ratios type of snow. So, again, 8 to 12 inches. This is going to be for Kentucky. I think that this particular map here is too far south. And while I'm talking to you, I'll take a quick gander. In fact, I'm going to come back to it. I want to go to New York next. All right, so we'll come back and we'll wrap things up here with final thoughts, and we'll take a look ahead towards that last storm in a moment. But let's go back to precipitation amounts. This is the European model, 12Z run from today. And for those that are familiar, the European model's kind of the cream of the crop typically. Doesn't always outperform the NAM in the short range, though. That's why I like to reference the NAM and this model particularly. But here we are into New York. So we're showing Western New York, Rochester, close to an inch. And again, I think for Rochester, Niagara Frontier, that's probably going to be all snow. And again, because the thermal profile will support snow up and down. And without there being that warm nose up above us, you're not going to get the sleet. So that stays downstate. These are 850 temperatures where that warm nose exists. I'll even look a little higher, up to 700. It's not going to happen. Downstate, it's a sleet, freezing rain. It's a mess for New York City, the big cities, Philadelphia, Providence, Boston. Again, it's a nasty mix, but this is going to be a straight up snow. I think for most of western New York, Rochester to Buffalo. You get towards Syracuse, you can mix a little bit with some sleet. So looking at the thermal profile, I feel pretty confident for just about an all-snow profile for western New York. How much are we talking about? And again, this is going to be an underestimate. Why will this be an underestimate? Because this is a straight-up 10-to-1 ratio. It's going to be higher than that. It's going to be higher than 10-to-1. Let me run this all the way through Wednesday. So at the bare minimum for Rochester, you're looking at 10 inches is going to be so easy to achieve. I think this is probably more realistic. Look at that. Yeah, it's showing 1.5 feet for Rochester. It's showing 1.5 feet for, was that Williams, Ontario or Sodus. It's showing 1.5 feet for Buffalo. I would say this is probably a good 10 to 15 inch snow right now. If you were going to corner me and ask me, I'd say 10 to 15. But again, It could be locally higher, as you're seeing here. This is the European model based on the Kuchera method, which oftentimes will overestimate snowfall. But again, because temperatures are going to be so cold, that's not off the table. And then here's the NAM. It's showing the same thing, 17, 18 inches. I like Rochester. Bare minimum would be 10. There's no way they get less than 10 if you're in Rochester, less than 10. It's probably more like a foot. I'd say 12 to 15, something like that. It's a good storm. This will be a good thumping, and then you heard the rumor mill, maybe dealing with another bit of a thumping later in the week. All right, so those are my snow totals. I like Louisville, Kentucky, Southern Indiana, 8 to 12. I like Western New York, including Rochester, Buffalo, about 12 to 15, maybe 12 to 16 inches of snow. It's going to be less in Syracuse because I think they're going to get in some sleet. All right, what about freezing rain? Where's the problem's going to be? Here's a problem for freezing rain. That's going to be downstate, as we talked about. Really, New York City should get above freezing, so I don't think you're going to have big accumulations down there. But you make your way in parts of southern New York State, the Catskills, the parts of the Green Mountains, the White Mountains of Massachusetts, Vermont, New Hampshire, and then some of those regions across Pennsylvania as well, especially where you have some elevation. You're going to see, a quarter to, I would say locally, as much as a half inch of ice. And that, of course, is enough to down some power lines, down some trees. It's going to cause some problems. What about into Kentucky? I think it's a more severe threat for Kentucky and Tennessee, by the way, if you happen to be following me from Tennessee. I think you've got a problem there as well. Kentucky, I would say south and east of Lexington, but Jackson, Kentucky, Hazard to Bowling Green, I would say an easy quarter to a half inch, locally 3/4 of an inch of freezing rain. That's going to cause problems. Nobody wants to see that. But unfortunately, I think it's coming. I think this is what we're going to be dealing with. All right, I want to go a little bit further south. Let's see, because again, there's some really strange places that are going to be affected by this storm. How about Mississippi? Parts of the Gulf Coast. You could have a glaze of ice in Houston, Galveston. You could have some sleet and freezing rain all the way up through Dixie. So that's going to be interesting. All right, with that being said, here's a look at the broader picture showing the sleet. That's the NAM. I want to compare it over here with the European model. And again, they're very similar. I would say the Euro's got a lot more freezing rain potential down along the Gulf Coast, central Louisiana, parts of Mississippi, and Dixie. So that's what we're looking at. That's what we're thinking. There is a second storm coming up down the road. And I'm just going to at least briefly mention that while I run through some questions and comments. The second storm is for the end of the week. Here's a look at, so I'll briefly go back. This is the first wave. You're looking at tonight. This is tomorrow in the morning. Main snow threat on Monday, reaching the Ohio River Valley. Afternoon and evening, it's going to come down very heavy. And then that reaches New York. So now we're into Monday night. New York's getting hit hard with snow, western and upstate. And again, that nasty mixture of sleet, freezing rain, and some snow south. New York City changes over to all rain before the system is done. But what about later in the week? So this is the Euro. The Euro is keeping this one a little further south now, and I like the Euro solution here. I think the next one is going to be further south. It could be south of it could be a miss for parts of the Ohio River Valley. Okay, and that's typically the way these things go. Models, if anything, will bias too far north when you have a substantial snowpack and substantial amount of cold that comes in. That's what we're going to see thanks to the first storm. So I think this thing, if anything, it could trend further south. Regardless, it brings in more snow for western New York. It brings in more snow for much of the eastern Great Lakes as well. And it brings back in that nasty mixture back into places like New York City, and Boston, and the East Coast. So both of these systems have potential for good snow, but both of them are probably going to be off of the coast and inland. So with that being said, I wanted to take a brief peek at the GFS. New run is coming in now. So this is the brand new run of the GFS, and there you go. It's bringing it further north. And let me go back to the previous run, compare, yeah. So it's trending north. The Euro is trending north. The NAM has got it with a further north track. That means if the GFS is right, you could see some of that sleet in Louisville, but I don't think it's going to last very long. And then there's your main thrust, heavy snowfall for Louisville, Kentucky, the Ohio River, and into Indiana. Again, this is the brand new run of the GFS. And then, again, it looks similar to what we just discussed for New York. I think the sleet stays south of Rochester, but it does mix in for Syracuse, and Albany is going to be sleet and freezing rain. So system 1, here's system 2. It's further north than the European model, but this is going to be for Thursday and Friday. It's worth watching. I think this is too far north for the GFS. I don't think that low tracks where it's showing across western New York. Is it possible? Sure. But I wouldn't place my bets on that. That's storm number 2. We've got plenty of time to watch that. Just know that we've got our hands full right now. Final look at all of the watches, all of the warnings. And again, it's a massive area. It's an absolute massive area that's impacted. We're just now seeing the snow developing. I did want to check quickly with the National Weather Service and see if they've chimed in with any new information. Again, warnings for just about everybody. It's really crazy. Warnings from the Mexican border of Texas. There's not on top of that Great Wall. You're going to see snow and sleet and freezing rain. But it goes all the way through the Northeast. Incredible. The snow is just now beginning to generate. It'll take a while, but all this will come together as, again, strong low pressure sweeps out of the Rockies tonight, southern Rockies tonight, interacts with some absolutely frigid conditions at the surface. Wanted to turn on those surface temperatures for just a moment, where you're looking at air temperature right now, Houston, Texas, sitting at 34, and it's going to get colder. You've got air temperatures right now. In Abilene, Texas, your temperature is 7 degrees. That's where I used to work, one of my old stomping grounds. Oklahoma City, it's 7 degrees. Topeka, Kansas, also one of my old stomping grounds, 2 degrees below zero. It's incredible, the amount of cold air. And then that cold is all the way up through the Canadian border, where you're single digits below zero, and that sub-zero or that near-zero air mass begins to filter east with the progress of this winter storm. All right, I'm going to take final questions, comments on both Facebook and also YouTube. Then we'll bring this one down for a close. We'll have another update coming up tonight. Appreciate you guys being on here. All right, so let's jump on in here, and boom, we've got PL on. We've got Stephanie for Southern Indiana and Louisville, Kentucky, 8 to 12 inches. For Rochester, I like you 12 to 15, 12 to 16 inches or so. So both areas are going to get a lot of snow. Ice is going to be significant for like the Catskills of New York, parts of central and eastern Pennsylvania. There's new ice storm warnings that are in effect just north of PA. And then again, ice storm warnings, Charleston. I think they're going to need to expand this. This is from Charleston, West Virginia to Hazard. I think they're probably going to need to expand this to include maybe Jackson. I don't know if it'd be as far north as Moorhead, but Jackson, maybe Mount Vernon, Somerset, Kentucky. I think you're going to see more freezing rain than what's currently projected. Just my thought. So that's it. Chris on here. Virginia's going to be all wet, my friend. I think there's an advisory for way up in the mountains. Rich Lupia, thank you for the share on Upstate Snow. That's Rich Lupia, Upstate Snow. Find him on Facebook, especially if you're a New Yorker and you love winter sports. He's a snowmobile enthusiast. And then there's Dennis McFiggins. This one just a visit. By fall year, I ran into a conversation there. So, all right, I'm going to go ahead and bring this one down for a close. I think I've covered everything that I promised you. I did go longer than I wanted to. I always do. But I'm going to be back this evening with a full update. And that's Weather Live, 8:45. We'll see you guys tonight. Thanks for being here. Guys, stay safe. You know what? The grocery's crazy right now. As you can imagine, it started getting crazy yesterday. But go get your bread and milk, friends. I think we're going to survive. Again, I'm speaking for our friends, not just in New York, but also in Kentucky. And thanks for being here. We'll be back with an update tonight. That's Weather Live at 8:45. You guys stay safe, stay warm. We'll be talking soon.